It's 6 o'clock, time for Madison's Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, February 10th, 2025. And we welcome you here. Could we have a roll call of attendance, please?
Scott Baldwin,
Here.
Mark Acosta,
Here.
Nancy Burkhart,
Here.
Rick Ferris,
Here.
Carl Eaglin.
Here.
Board members, have you had a chance to look over last month's minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Are there any additions or corrections?
Nope.
And I move we accept the minutes as submitted.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. The minutes are accepted. Under renewals this month, I will just read them briefly. Harold Perry Jr., Mike and Melissa Hess, Matt and Daniel Chandler, Oyster Catcher LLC, Matt Chandler, Vintage Lanes, and Jerry Shields have all paid their renewal fees, and there are no complaints, to my knowledge. Therefore, I move we renew all these conditional uses.
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. They're renewed. And just for the record, Stephen and Don Whalen, 715 East Main, that was an Airbnb. They have sold the property, and therefore that conditional use is expired. Moving on, the tabled applications, BZCU-24-60, staff tells me that one has been withdrawn. So we will move on to new applications. BZV number 1 on the agenda, BZVU-25-1, Ryan Leach requesting a variance of use to allow his house, which is in open space, to be used as a dwelling unit, 1023 East Bond Drive. Yes, sir. If you'd give your name and address for the record, please.
Ryan Leach, my address is 132 Lois Lane, Hanover. I'm actually representing the owners of the house,
Okay,
I'm a contractor.
that's fine. And could you explain to the board and the public your situation?
Basically, the house was grandfathered in. It was already there before it was zoned green space. And all we're wanting to do is extend the walls out to the edge of the house. Like the porch goes around the house. So on the two side, or the east side and the north side, we're going to extend the walls out to the edge of the porch. That's basically all we're doing. We're not extending the footprint or anything like that.
The house is a dwelling unit, right? The
Yes.
family's going to live in it,
Yes.
and there are no plans to rent it out?
No.
And I understand the mess you're in.
Yeah.
House was built, what, 1996, I believe?
So, yeah.
Under the 1981 zoning ordinance. And it wasn't supposed to have been there, and somehow it got there. Because that was zoned open space back then. And then now we have the 2016 zoning ordinance, so there's a new ordinance, and hence it was there, so that's the governing one right now. And I know I was at the meeting when you went to Plan Commission, and they rejected the idea of spot zoning. So you're here requesting a variance of use
Yes, sir.
just to allow the house to be there and to allow a building permit for what you want to do. There's one question I have. I heard in the meeting I attended something to the effect your house was built on the lot line of the adjacent property to the east, I believe, or on that property. Could you clarify that?
Do you want to speak on that? I mean, it's not. I'll let her speak on that. She knows more about that than I do.
Ma'am, if you could give your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Mary Ann Bennett, 4004 West State Road 56, Hanover. And yes, when we bought that piece of property, it was only the one just straight down, okay? And there was no very much of the property lines or anything set at that time. So when we build it, yes, we're right on the line. We sure are. So, that's all considered green space. Nothing can be built there. So, I don't know. I don't know what your question is.
Well, my question was, I kind of got the impression it was built onto the adjacent property owner's property, but that may be a misunderstanding.
It is not on their
Oh,
property.
okay.
We have probably at least, I guess, 5-6 foot away from it.
Has a survey ever been done?
To their property or to ours?
Your property, do you have survey lines?
Back in 2010, there was one done by Sandy Bruns when she owned the property.
Do you have a copy of it?
I do.
And by that survey, it shows how many feet from the line?
It's like 5 or 6 foot.
See on the GIS, it's described as Lot 92 plus 5 foot off the west side of Lot 94 Sheets addition and some other stuff. And the address was listed as 1032 Fillmore Street sometime along the way.
Yeah, the property we were able to buy from Susan Smith going to the west of it, that's 1033 Fillmore, and then this one's, 10 something Bond Drive, so
Total confusion.
it
I
is total
understand that.
confusion down there, that is for sure. 1032 Bond Drive.
Board members, do you have any questions, comments?
Do I understand you to say that what you're going to be constructing will still fit on the same
Absolutely.
total footprint of what
Nothing's
is there
going to be
today?
changed, building out, not doing anything,
Okay.
just based,
Just gonna improve the looks of it.
yes.
Nicole, I got a question for you, but really what we're voting on today is just for the variance of use, so for that place to be used as a dwelling unit.
Correct.
Not about them building anything, just for them to be used as a dwelling unit.
That is correct.
Correct?
Okay, yeah.
And someone's been living in it since, 96 you said?
Well, we stay down there a lot in the summertime and warm weather and things.
Right.
But, when it gets really cold, we usually kind of back out for a little bit and then come back in the spring.
But since it's been there since 96, somebody at some point has been living off and on in it.
Sure, yes, ma'am, yes, we do.
So you're not using it for an Airbnb type of an affair?
No, we are not.
Just you come and live there from time to time?
Well, the family comes,
Right, the family, okay. And just to be clear for everybody, you live in the house that's built up on the stilts.
correct.
Okay, any other questions, comments, board members? Would anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed variance? You two folk can have a seat.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Come on up and
Okay, thank you.
give your name and address for the record, please. It's on whenever the red light's on. Hit it again. Hit the little button again. There you
There
are.
we go. Charlie Ricketts, 707 West First Street. I'm here to speak in favor of the granting of a conditional use permit. It's my understanding, listened to the conversations, that the place has been there for almost 30 years. And to my knowledge, unless somebody knows something else, it hasn't presented a problem to anybody. And as somebody pointed out on the board, we're not talking about property lines. We're just talking about the dwelling. And it's my understanding that the dwelling will not change in footprint, but it will have some additions to the deck. So the footprint stays the same. The building on the second story will have part of the deck enclosed. Yeah, it should not have been there some 30 years ago. but some guy that I used to know here in town said it is what it is. And now we're here to deal with it, and I don't think anybody seriously is going to tell them to tear it down. And all they want to do is make it a little more livable. So I ask you to grant the variance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak for or against this variance? Board members, one last chance. All right, well, then, we have, as prescribed by state law, some findings of facts that we have to go through. This is a variance of use. So we will go through our findings of fact. Number one, will approval of this, and board members, I ask that you give an explanation because this is a variance of use, which is actually this board allowing a use that city council, in other words, the legislature, has never approved for this particular district. So what we're doing is approving something that the legislature has never really granted, but the state also allows certain situations that arise that are bizarre, or there's some good reason to do what we're doing. So I would appreciate if you give an explanation for the record of what you think about each one of these. Number one, will approval of this application injure the public health, safety, morals, general welfare? Mr. Acosta.
I don't see any injurious nature to it. If anything, it's going to improve the, they're not expanding it, they're not doing anything, they're just going to basically dress it up, make it look better. So if anything, it should benefit the area.
Mr. Ferris.
No, I don't see any reason to believe that it's going to be injurious to any of those things.
Mrs. Burkhart.
No, I don't see any problem with any of those.
Mr. Eaglin.
I don't know of any problems they've had or any complaints in the use of that property in the last 20 years. So I don't see it as a problem.
And the building has been there since about 1996. I think it's shown that it's not going to injure the public welfare. I think that one's approved. Number two, use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Acosta.
No, I think by improving the dwelling, it should benefit the adjacent areas.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think we've had several applications over the last couple of years that are kind of in that area, and I don't remember ever hearing somebody say that their property was devalued because of this property.
Mrs. Burkhart.
No, I don't see a problem in that area at all.
Mr. Eaglin.
No, I think it will help, like I said, it would just improve the area, because it is a area of town that is improving. It seems like almost every week there's something going on up there, new buildings, new houses. I think this would just add to that, improve in that area.
We have heard no testimony either from neighbors or from a recognized authority like a realtor or a property assessor that there will be any adverse effects, so I think that one's met. Number three, the need for the variance arises from some condition peculiar to the property. What is it, Mr. Acosta?
Just with, every meeting we deal with some uniqueness of the downtown area, riverfront section where the extremely narrow lots, all those things. And again, it's an existing building prior to the zoning ordinance that we're discussing today. So again, if, think about strict application of that, wouldn't allow the house to exist, let alone allow any improvements.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I think history is part of the plague in this whole situation. But, as a member of the public commented, it is what it is. And I don't think there's going to be any adverse effects, because the site exists, but strict application of the ordinances would prevent the use.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with what Mr. Ferris said. You've got a building there in a part where it's not supposed to be, but it's already been there, and it's been there since '96.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I think since they want to move into this area full-time, I just think it's gonna be an improvement.
The peculiar condition, the building is there. There's not supposed to be a building. It's unreasonable to expect this board to think it should be torn down. So I think the peculiarity in this case is that the thing is there, and the landowner is trying to bring it into conformity with the law. I think that one's met. Number 4, strict application of the zoning ordinance will constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to this property. What is it? Mr. Acosta.
Yeah, I think previous comments about the inability to even use the property, let alone improve it.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, strict application of the zoning ordinance would tell us that the building shouldn't be there, but it's there, and I think that the hardship would be if we did apply the zoning ordinance as it's written.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Right, I agree again with Mr. Ferris. If you're not allowed to live there, you would just have an abandoned building. So I don't see the point of that.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I mean, it's because of the zoning, we're not gonna tear it down, but I'm okay with it.
And I think Mrs. Burkhart summed it up very well. It's there. It's been there a long time. There have been no adverse effects. And if you can't maintain it, then that seems to me to be unreasonable. I think that one's met. And the last one, the approval does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan. Mr. Acosta.
I don't think it does. That whole end of town, I think is, the improvements being made, the new homes in that area, certainly support the comprehensive plan, and this improvement on this home would fit right into that, so.
Mr. Ferris.
I agree with Mr. Acosta. I think, I think that given the situation and what the applicant has applied for, it doesn't harm the comprehensive plan, for this area, so.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree. I see no problem with the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree.
And since the building has been there for a long time without interfering with anything or dragging down anything, I think that it's met the general meaning of the comprehensive plan. And once again, folk, I just remind you our criteria. They're found in Indiana state law. We didn't make this stuff up. We've gone through our findings of fact. We'll accept a motion.
I move that we approve the application variance of use BZVU-25-1.
Second the motion.
And can we have a roll call?
Rick Ferris,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart.
Yes.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes.
Carl Eaglin.
Yes.
Sir, you have your variance of use. We wish you well. Moving on to the next one, BZVD-25-1, David Joe Craig, a variance from development standards for setbacks, located at 904 Lanier Drive. That's medium, that's R8.
That sounds too
Yes, sir, if you could give your name and address for the record and tell the board what your situation is.
It's David, I go by Joe, my middle name Craig, 494 Brentwood Drive, Madison, Indiana.
And could you explain what's going on, why you're requesting a variance?
The reason why I'm requesting a variance is I bought this lot a while back and I decided to improve it. Of course, I started out with Indiana, to do the culvert, so I had to put a culvert in. But now I had planned to put a building on there, pole barn type, which there are several down through that area. And I called 811 to come up and check everything out, and what we found was there's an old city sewer that goes back across from east to west on the north end of that. Whereas I wanted to build one straight building 30 feet wide. So in order to comply with that, and to have the amount of square feet that I wanted in the original building, I wanted to ask for a variance on the west side to be able to keep the width and still have a wider lane on the west side to get back to that property if it ever needs to be serviced by the city, or for me to be able to have a way to get back to the back building that I had to segregate from.
Will you be putting a drive through there, Joe?
Gravel on that west side,
Okay.
yeah. And I also found out in the process that the house just to the west to me is encroaching on the setback, so I only have 7.5 feet there. And it also gives me the opportunity to widen that back up between a house, so that so if we ever needed to get, or they ever need to get back there, it would straighten that one out, but.
How wide is that? What's the size of that lot, Joe?
Well, it's a parallelogram, so it's
Right.
kind of
Yeah,
wide
it's
a
kinda hard
little
to
bit,
figure it out.
and I think I've got it written on one of those.
Yeah.
I think it's 48.
48.45.
Yeah,
45.
48.5 feet, yeah.
Yeah. So, that's why I used the numbers I did. I learned a lot on that. Usually I expect that downtown, but
Yeah,
not
exactly.
on top of the hill.
By the way, I appreciate this drawing.
Oh, thank
It's one of the best ones we've had. We get some doozies.
Yeah, we have turned down some in the past on the hilltop but with your situation, it's hard to not encroach on the property lines,
Yeah.
to do anything at all with the size of that lot.
Board members, any other questions or comments? Would anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed variance? One last chance, board members, any other questions? Okay, well, you can have a seat, sir. And once again, we will go through our findings of fact. There are 3 criteria. This is a variance from developmental standards. And I appreciate an answer, an explanation of your reasoning, since this is variance, board members. Number 1, will this injure the public health, safety, morals, general welfare? Mr. Acosta.
No, there doesn't seem to be any impact at all to that. Actually, using some vacant land, has a uniqueness in the size and shape of the lot.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Acosta. I mean, the applicant is wanting to improve the property, and I think that's a good fit for that area.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, as he stated, he's trying to make a wider lane to get better access, so I think he's improving the area.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yeah, I don't see any problem with safety. As a matter of fact, there's several homes there that's been rebuilt, and this one area is actually starting to look a lot better. So I think this will just help improve with safety and everything else involved.
And I see no problem with public general welfare. I think he's doing this to avoid problems of covering up a sewer, which helps the general welfare immensely, and also to widen one side of it for better entrance. I think that one's met. Number 2, will this affect the use and value of adjacent properties adversely? Mr. Acosta.
I don't see any impact of that. Again, going to develop a lot that is currently vacant, and certainly will meet the standards that the city sets as far as the buildings and those type of things. So it should help the neighborhood as far as using the land.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I mean, he's trying to improve his property, which I think will in turn improve the area.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
Yeah, I see no problem in that area.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, there again, I think all the properties in that area will see an increase in value, what Mr. Craig is doing here.
And again, we have heard no testimony from a neighbor, from a realtor, from anybody with legal standing in Indiana, so I think that one's met. Number 3, the practical difficulties in the use of the property. Mr. Acosta.
Just the uniqueness, the shape of the lot, being long and narrow, and then encumbered with the sewer line that runs through it. Kind of limits it only to the options really proposed.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Acosta's comments, and, would just say that the shape and the dimensions of the lot make it really difficult to plan any other kind of structure. So I think the applicant is trying to adapt his building plans, to fit that lot, which will in turn be an improvement.
Mrs. Burkhardt.
I agree with Mr. Ferris's comments.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I think Joe's been dealing with the difficulties of that lot, and, I thank him for, working to make it work with the difficulties that he's had.
And the practical difficulties is the location of the sewer, the width of land available for access to it, so I think there are enough practical difficulties to meet that one. Well, we have gone through our findings of fact. We'll take a motion.
I make a motion, we approve BZVD-25-1, David Joe Craig.
Second.
And a roll call?
Carl Eaglin,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin,
Yes.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhardt,
Yes.
Rick Ferris.
Yes.
You have your variance, sir. We wish you well. Moving on, number 3 on the agenda, BZVD-25-3, Thomas Cheatham, requesting a variance from developmental standards for lot acreage, 1166 East River Bluff Lake Drive, that's zoned RA. And yes, sir, could somebody come up and explain your situation?
It's kind of tough on me because I gotta be Mark Cheatham. It's not easy. My name is Paul Kelly. He's out of town. He asked me to be involved. Of course, you all know what happened to his house, I'm sure, and his house was built a long time ago, and now it's, there's a new rule about it, and I don't know really what to say, but you've all been through it, or have you looked at it already or not? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm happy to speak up on this as well, This is Joe Jenner, and
Yeah.
this is something that's come up at least once, if not twice, and this is kind of a solution that we've come up with on how to deal with these problems with some of the lots up there. So, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but we've got a little bit of a precedent for this.
Indeed. Yes, we've been through this before, and And board members, to refresh your memory, we went through this at 1360 East Scenic View Drive, and the ultimate reason was that under the 1981 zoning ordinance, these should have been 1 acre lots.
Yeah.
But many of the lots in that subdivision are less than 1 acre, and there was never a variance granted along the way. And so now these homeowners are stuck in sort of a legal morass. And as Attorney Jenner said, the way that it's been dealt with, well, prior 1360 Scenic View Drive was a variance granted to the owner because his lot does not meet standards it was supposed to have met. So some of you were on the board then, and you remember it well. So you, basically in summary, the house got hit by lightning, it burned down. You're rebuilding on exactly the same foundation. So there's no changes really except what are required by the emergency.
Right.
And in order to do it legally, you need a variance to get a building permit and this, that, and the other. Board members, do you have any questions or comments?
Moving right along, isn't it? I don't know who the contractor is, he's doing a good job.
Well, it's his cousin.
Oh, okay.
And I would mention, I live in that neighborhood, and this is something that most of us face there now, just because of the way the initial platting went. Some things didn't happen that were supposed to happen. It's almost virtually every lot, 30-some lots up there face the same,
Yeah.
almost just
Situation.
administrative type
Yeah.
thing, so understood.
Any other questions or comments, board members? Would anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this variance? Okay, thank you, sir. You can have a seat.
Okay.
Board members, in light of the fact that the attorney has spoken and said this is the way we're trying to deal with this mess, and in light of the fact that a similar situation arose in 2021, with your permission, I will just go through the 3 criteria for a variance and ask if anyone has any objections. So that's what we will do. So
Okay.
number 1, injurious to the public health. Anybody have any objections?
No,
No.
Number 2, hurting adjacent property values. Any objections?
no,
Number 3, the practical difficulties one.
No.
Anybody have any objections about the situation?
no objection.
Having gone through those and having been through this in that subdivision before, we can take a motion for variance.
I move we approve application BZVD -25-3.
Second,
And can we have a roll call?
Carl Eaglin,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin,
Yes.
Mark Acosta,
yes.
Nancy Burkhart.
Yes.
Rick Barris.
Yes.
Well, we wish you well, sir, in rebuilding your home. Next item on the agenda, BZCU-24-65, Brittany Jackson, conditional use permit for an in-home daycare at 904 East 2nd Street, that's Historic District Residential, category 681. And just, ma'am, if you could give your name and address for the record, please,
Brittany Jackson, 904 East 2nd Street.
and explain what you want to do.
I am wanting to run a daycare out of my home to give the community downtown a better opportunity of having a childcare option.
I went by your house today.
Everybody goes by
Yeah, you are on one of the busiest corners in Madison, at least for the downtown area. So my question to you is, parking. Parents are gonna have to park to
Yes.
drop their kids off and pick them up. Well, I walked on Harrison Street, there's no parking sign, but it'd be crazy to park there because it's only one lane wide. Then I went on Second Street, east of your property, there's no yellow curb, there's no sign I saw, so I guess you can park along there.
So the benefit of parking is we park back by the garage,
Right.
and my mother lives next door, so she tries to park back by the garage. So we actually have a huge driveway that you can fit like 10 cars in, and she's agreed we can use all that driveway for parking.
Well, I had seen your double concrete driveway there, so I didn't realize that's your mother.
Yes,
lives
my mom
there.
lives next door.
So you would tell your clients to park, you arrange your own cars such that they could pull into that, your
Yes.
own double driveway there.
Yes, we park as far back as we possibly can so that they have plenty of room.
So you'd agree not to have anybody try to park on Second Street?
I don't want them to park on Second Street.
How many children do you think you will have there?
So I am licensed to have 12, but I don't think I'll have 12.
So max of 12.
Yeah,
What hours are you gonna be working?
6:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
And that will help with parents drop, I know when I drop my kids at daycare, it'd be like, 7:30, so it's not gonna be a
Right.
busy time on that street, I wouldn't
Actually,
think
no,
so.
it's pretty calm.
Right,
in the
that's what I'm
morning
saying, that
times.
probably helps you, having those early hours. And you're not there very long when you drop kids off and when you pick them up, you're usually ready to drop them off and you're ready
Well,
to
in
pick
the
them up.
afternoons too, it's like the busy hour is like 3 o'clock.
Yeah,
So it's
right.
after the 3 o'clock busy hour, so
Right.
that's beneficial as well.
Yeah, so I don't think traffic's gonna be a problem with her and parking.
The only thing that bothers me is, it's like, you never know what's gonna happen, but, if your mother decided to move and sell the property, that's really gonna hurt your drop-off area, correct? I mean, how much of that concrete do you own is on your property?
So it's like 2/5, well, it's about half, the pull-in
About half
area,
of it,
it's about
okay.
half.
Okay, it's kinda hard to, see from the street where.
Yeah, it's about half, it's kinda in the middle.
Yeah, your lot is down here and your mother's is a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, when you're dropping kids off at daycare, you're not in there socializing. You're usually dropping the kids off because you usually have to go to work, so you're not there very long.
Right.
Just, that's just from my experience when I drop my kids off at daycare and pickup. Same thing with pickup. You're there, you're trying to get your children, and you're trying to move on. So that they're not gonna be parked there for a long time.
Right.
I agree. My experience, when we had small kids, the same thing. It's stop and go stuff, so.
And I wanted to open one downtown because all the daycares, I just recently started being a stay-at-home mom, so all of them are up on top of the hill. You see daycares all up on top of the hill. I just wanted to give downtown an opportunity to have that childcare option.
Any other questions or comments, board members? Would anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed conditional use? Well, and you can have a seat, ma'am. Once again, folks, we have a list of 9 criteria dictated by state law. So we will go through them. Number 1, is this the appropriate conditional use? Number 681, Mr. Acosta.
Yes, I agree with that.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree it is.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Yes, it is.
Carly.
Yes, it is.
Mr. Edelin. Is this harmonious with the zoning ordinance, comprehensive plan, Mr. Acosta?
I believe so. It's often a service to downtown individuals that currently doesn't exist.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's an opportunity to provide a service that's needed downtown.
Mrs. Burkhart?
I agree. I think it's certainly a needed service.
Mr. Edelin?
Yes, it's a needed service in that area.
I see no problems with the comprehensive plan. Of course, wants small businesses. Number 3, harmonious with the existing or intended character, not change the character of the same area. Mr. Acosta.
No, may generate slight bit more traffic. Other than that, everything stays the same.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Acosta. I think, she's thought through the parking, the drop-off and the pickup piece of it, and it makes sense.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I see no problem with the character of the area.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I think it's gonna work very well.
I don't even think this is really relevant. It's not going to change that at all. Number 4, hazardous, disturbing neighboring uses. Mr. Acosta.
I mean, I'm assuming all the neighbors were notified of the intent and none are here to protest. I assume they do not see any disturbance or anything coming from this.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Acosta.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I see no problem with that one.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree.
I could not have possibly put it better than Mr. Acosta did. I think that one's met. Number 5, this is utilities, street and fire protection, basic services, things like that, sewer. Mr. Acosta.
Yeah, everything's in place already. There'd be no additional need for anything.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree as well. All the services are already there.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with those comments.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I think services been met.
There's adequate utilities for this. There's no problem there. Number 6, this is about detrimental to the economic welfare of the community, going to cost the community anything. Mr. Acosta.
No impact to that. I mean, if anything, it's offering a service that doesn't exist currently.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mr. Acosta.
Mrs. Burkhart.
Yeah, I see no detriment to the economic welfare.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yeah, it's gonna benefit a lot of folks to not have to go on the hill and drop their children off.
And I agree with Mr. Eaglin. It's going to help the welfare of the community a bit. This is about 7, about excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odors. Mr. Acosta.
No, I don't see any impact at all on that.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, it's a small daycare. I don't see any issues with any of those.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I see no issues with any of those.
Mr. Eaglin.
No, should be no impact at all.
The only possible one would be traffic, and I think they're going to deal with that by off-street parking. Number 8, this is about interference with traffic on the public thoroughfares. Mr. Acosta.
No, I think the explanation the applicant gave concerning how they intend to handle the parking and the drop-off, I think does not cause any disruption.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, the applicant commented, that she recognizes the issue there and then has a well-thought-out plan, so I don't see any problem.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with those comments.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree with the comments.
I think the off-street parking will handle that. And number 9, this is loss of historic features, scenic features. Mr. Acosta.
No impact at all on that.
Mr. Ferris.
No, I don't see any issues there either.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I see no issues.
Mr. Eaglin.
No, should be no change to the buildings.
I don't even think that applies. We've gone through our finding of fact. I move that we approve a conditional use permit for BZCU-24-65 for a period of 1 year, subject to the following conditions: hours of operation, 6:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And second, all parking will be off-street. It's my motion.
I'll second the motion.
We have a roll call.
Rick Ferris.
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart.
Yes.
Mark Costa.
Yes.
Scott Baldwin.
Yes.
Carl Eaglin.
Yes.
Well, ma'am, we wish you well. Next item on the agenda, BZVU-25-2, Joel Ferguson requesting a variance of use to allow for a photography service business, 723 West Main Street in the Specialty District. So, yes, sir, if you give your name and address for the record, explain your situation.
Joel Ferguson, 723 West Main Street's the address that is in question, and then I live at 237 East Main Street in Hanover. Right now, the property is zoned as a specialty district, and it was previously a photography studio under Beth McRoberts Photography. And she was there for, I think, 2 years until her daughter got sick, and then she asked me if I wanted to take over the building. And I wasn't privy to the knowledge that it wasn't zoned properly for a photography studio. And when I came into the city to talk to them about signage and positions of signs and all that, I just asked if there was anything else I might need to check into about what I might need to do to make it legit. And they had said, yeah, well, let's check into zoning, and we noticed that it wasn't zoned properly for that. So that's about the extent of it, just wanting to get things all squared away and keep going.
I can understand your dilemma. Board members, public, this is where all that comes from. The Standard Land Use Coding Manual, United States Urban Renewal Administration of 1965. Well, in 1965, if you look up why they don't have zoning there that way, it's under category 62. This is 622 photographic services. 62 is stuff like laundry, dry cleaning, dyeing, linen supply, diaper washing, laundering, rug cleaning, photographic services. And those all use nasty chemicals. I assume nowadays that everything you do is digital.
I do digital photography, yes, but I do wet plate photography too, actually, which is like a Civil War era photography. But the stuff that I do is all in containers that don't go down drains or anything like that. So, and a lot of it's like outdoors. Like I'll go to set up, I plan on setting up, doing that maybe for Lanier Days, Chautauqua, the farmer's market, and stuff like that. So,
With no chemical storage on your property amount more than a gallon or something.
right,
And no
Yeah.
disposal on your property.
no disposal.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't dispose of it at all because it's all maintainable to where you can reuse it over and over again.
There you
and
go.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You just maintain the pH and add a little water. It's pretty nice.
It's like keeping your pool, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not like black and white photography where you.
No, it's not like a
microdollar
darkroom.
D76. and then
So you don't
use
have like
pictures.
developer and fixer that you need to deal with?
No, I do. With the tin type stuff, yeah, I do. But it's not something that I dispose of.
You're just saying your tintype chemicals are not like modern black and white
No.
photography stuff or color processing stuff.
No. Yeah, it's not like something that you, because with the black and white photography, like when you do the film, like if you do, I don't know, just any basic black and white developer, after you use it, you just dump it down the drain.
Right.
But with this, I'll recycle it and filter it and use it over and over again. So,
Joe, you mentioned that it had been a photography operation prior.
Yeah,
Did they do all of that type of?
No.
It was just maybe a digital?
it was just digital. And
Okay.
primarily all of that I'm gonna be doing in that facility is the digital stuff. And then, I wanted to actually make it like an old time photo studio. Like I bought a, old wet plate camera, like a big studio camera. And then I bought like some, studio strobes to be able to use those as well. And I wanted to buy some like old time costumes for the historic tourists
Sure.
to be able to come in and get like an old time photo done.
At least you see a lot of that at the tourist area.
Have you a gunslinger and stuff out there? You know, yeah.
Dodge City. Okay.
30-minute exposures,
Well,
things like that.
with 9,000 watt seconds of light, you only need a second,
Do that ugly.
or not even a second. It's an instant thing.
Any other questions or comments, board members?
None here.
No, I think he's just kind of stuck with, just that specialty. When they did the ordinance, it was just kind of left out, because if you look in ours, funeral and crematory services are allowed in specialty district with a conditional use, but yet he can't have a photography studio.
Yep.
So it just doesn't make sense. I think it just wasn't added in at the time.
And I also saw that you could do a photography services in professional, general business, and
Right.
central business district, but not SD.
Yeah.
Is there a way to appeal that, to get the zoning changed so that
I
I
think
don't
that-
have to do a variance of use?
The best
Every
way
year?
would be to go to Plan Commission, who would recommend to City Council that the zoning ordinance be amended.
Yeah,
And then it could be amended to allow 622 in your district.
yeah.
But this
That's the
variance of
best
use
way.
should take care of it though, right?
It would, the variance of use.
You have to
would,
reapply every year though,
But
I think.
no,
Oh, no, I don't think so.
You
no, you apply once. It
Right.
Oh,
And
okay.
it goes with the property, so you're good.
goes with the
Thought that's what
property.
Ray said.
But
but-
that means, when you request a variance, that's property specific. It's not for the whole district.
Right,
If city council amends the zoning ordinance, it's the whole district.
I see.
So it's the way the system works.
Well, that works.
So should the board grant you this, you would be, of course, your property, you would be allowed to do this on just that one address
Right,
in specialty district. But then if you move to another district, then where it's permitted, well.
have to reapply?
No,
If it's
no,
not
no.
permitted though?
If
If
it's
it
not
says
permitted, yeah, you go
permitted-
back through the same process.
Right,
The way it works is some things are permitted, that means you can just do it. Some things are allowed with a conditional use, that means you gotta come here.
yeah.
And in professional, general business, and central business district, it's permitted, but not where you are. We run into these things all the time here.
It is what it is.
Here you go. Yeah.
Been used before.
Any other questions or comments, board members?
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed variance of use? Well, then we will move on to our, I might also remind you, board members, under section 1133 of the zoning ordinance, variances of use, says the Board of Zoning Appeals shall approve or deny variances of use from the terms of the zoning ordinance. The board may impose reasonable conditions as part of its approval. So reasonable condition, if you so choose, might be to say he can only do digital or tintype photography and processing. I think that would be reasonable unless our attorney wants to add anything. We will go through our findings of fact. Will this injure the public health, safety, and morals, general welfare? Mr. Acosta.
No, be offering a service that once was in that facility and be able to benefit the public.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Acosta's comments.
Mrs. Burkhart,
No, I don't see any problem with any of those.
Mr. Eaglin.
No, hadn't been a problem in the past, and I don't see any in the future.
And there has been a history of photography studios there, and there is no report of anything that's adverse, so I think that one's met. Number 2, this is adjacent property values, Mr. Acosta.
No, I mean, all the way down Main Street are, commercial properties, stores, shops, all that. I think this actually adds a flavor to the Main Street.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think the photography business, fits the area and will add benefit to the area.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree. I think it only enhance the area.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree, and then, like I said, it's a lot better than having vacant buildings.
And there has been no testimony from any recognized authority that there will be adverse effects on property values. I think that's met. Number 3, the condition peculiar to the property. What is it, Mr. Acosta?
Again, we deal with so much of this downtown, kind of a commercial area, with shops and whatnot. And I think as you spoke earlier, some of those things were drawn up before photography was even a commercial business.
Mr. Ferris.
I think the original definitions and list of businesses suitable for that zoning area, they're not perfect, and it seems like we've uncovered an imperfection. So the strict application, would prevent Mr. Ferguson from operating his photography business, when I don't think that really applies to his situation.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with Mr. Ferris's comment. There's a wide variety that are allowed in that area, but his just particular business just is not for some reason. So I just don't think that was included.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree with previous comments.
And I think Mr. Ferris put it very well, and Mrs. Burkhart. Photography studios are almost allowed next door, but not in that specialty district. So I think that's the peculiar situation. Number 4, unnecessary hardship. What is it? Mr. Acosta.
I mean, going with strict interpretation and all that, then basically the business couldn't operate and probably shouldn't have been operating even previously.
Mr. Ferris.
I couldn't have said it any better. I agree with Mr. Costa.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I too agree with that comment.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree.
The unnecessary hardship, since there has been a studio there previously doing the same thing, possibly even using more modern chemicals than the old-fashioned ones. The unnecessary hardship is, maybe I should call it inconsistent zoning, but I think that one's met. And the last one, does it interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan, Mr. Acosta?
No, I think using the facility on Main Street, offering a service to the public, even mentioning costumes and stuff, that's something that especially enhances tourism and all those type of things. So I think it very much so supports a comprehensive plan.
Mr. Ferris?
Yeah, I agree as well. I think that fits well into that area and fits the comprehensive plan with offering those services to tourists.
Mrs. Burkhart,
I agree with those comments.
Mr. Eaglin.
I agree.
No, it does not interfere with the comprehensive plan. It's a small business that fits in very well with the idea of businesses on Main Street, so I think that's met. But we've gone through our findings of fact. I'll float this idea before you, board members. Should we put what may be a reasonable restriction, that it be limited to digital photography and old-fashioned tintype photography, or do you, board members, is your general consensus that's not necessary?
I don't think it's necessary.
I agree.
Yeah, Mr. Ferguson come to us, with all the answers, and, he didn't try to avoid us, so I don't think there's anything there he's gonna hide from us, so I don't think we need that.
Then I move that we approve a variance of use for application number BZVU-25-2.
Second.
We have a roll call.
Rick Barrett,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin,
Yes.
Carl Eaglin.
Yes.
Well, sir,
Good luck.
take pictures. Next item on the agenda, BZCU-25-3, Michael, I hope I pronounced that right, and
Yeah.
Lygia Thornton, conditional, I hope I got your name right. Conditional use permit for in-home daycare, 1110 North Borchding Road. That's residential agriculture. Category 681, yes. If you could give your name and address for the record, please. Explain what your plans are.
Michael Thornton, 1110 North Borchding Road, Madison. Our goal is to start a daycare in the back third of the house. We've already fostered, we've got the area. We're wanting to help out the earlier people that go into work. It'd be from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. If they go in early, they can get off. If they get off late, it's still available. Or if others need it a little earlier or a little later, we're flexible and we're just not set on our times. And for that area, people shoot uptown, or they want to go uptown and go out. If they got to go north to go to work, to Columbus, or any other direction they decide to leave town, that's an option.
So Monday through Friday,
Yes, sir, Monday through Friday.
how many?
From 1 to 12 kids, it'll be a class 1 home. We won't go over that because the area, I don't want to make a nuisance or a headache.
Will it be a outside play area or anything of that nature?
It's got a huge outside play area. It's got a big old tree house. It's got almost 3 acres in the backyard, which
Okay.
majority will be cut off for the front of the park for the kids to play in. The tree house and everything else will be mulched, so it'll be safe for them.
So shouldn't be much noise then for the neighbors.
No, because I'm, 80 plus feet away from my right neighbor, 60 or less from there, almost 100 feet from the road. There's a double driveway. If I had to, I got a 4-car garage there, which 90% of the time the vehicles are in the garage, so you got the whole driveway. If I need a little more area, I've got a grass area up front, in front of the 4-car garage. If they wanted to back into that, I can gravel that and make it easy accessible in and out.
Yeah, looking at your site, that plenty of area, plenty of parking, looks,
Yeah, I live just down the road. There's enough area there to service 50 kids.
I just won't start here. Maybe a year or two, go up, but we'd have to expand out to do that, or add another facility to the property to do that. We just want to start small. Since we already foster and all that, we've got that part taken care of. We just want to help the community out, because I work in Grody right now, and there's been people fired because they don't have daycare. And if you call every daycare in town, there's a waiting list. One just left, she used to work at Grody. she's starting, yes, I know. But we're just here to help where we can, instead of hurt.
And I do hear people discuss more and more about needing additional daycare opportunities and stuff too, so.
You can go through the state to get funding for kids. And on top of that, most of the parents have to pay, or they gotta pay full price. And there's 2 in Hanover, they're full. You got OVO's full, waiting list. You got, I think Lena's is full on the Hilltop. Her daughter's is full. So 2 more of the community, that's gonna be more options for people to spread.
Yeah.
Wherever they wanna go.
I drove by your house. Space is no issue. You have all kinds of space out there. Any other questions or comments, board members? Would anyone in the audience like to speak for or against this proposed conditional use permit? Yes, sir. Yeah, you can have a seat, sir. Come on up and give your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Doug Purcell, 1090 North Borcherdane Road, Madison, Indiana. I live right next door to him. And my reason, and I have a concern for this, it has more to do with, they've had plenty of animals. They got chickens, they got dogs, they got cats. This past year, I called animal control. I gave them 3 mothers and all their kittens back to animal control because they're cats. My wife went to their house several times, did return the cats to them, but the lady was not very nice and basically pretty nasty with her. Then I had an incident this past year where I'm in my side yard. They have 2 dogs. One had a bunch of puppies. Dogs running all over the place, running out in the street, running down the road, all over the place. One of the dogs got in the chicken coop and I guess killed the chickens. Well, he came outside and not only shot him once, but shot him 4 times, which at that point I called the police, said this guy's in the backyard killing his animals. So they came out, they confiscated the 1 dog, they had the other dogs in the house, so they didn't know that they were there. So he got the one of the pup, the other one's dead. And I'm sorry, you don't act like that in a neighborhood like this. What happens if a young kid gets in their chicken coop? If you can't protect your chickens from a dog, what makes you can protect it from a child? And not only that, if you look at the property is, there's not a thing wrong with the property. It's big enough to handle kids. But if they got out in the front of his house, you got Borcherdane Road right there. What do you do with that? If nobody can get to a child, he can get out on Borcherdane Road in a heartbeat, then what do you do? It's not like it's enclosed area there. I mean, the back is enclosed, but the dogs still get through it, the chickens still get through it. I mean, if you've been out to Shantytown and looked at the chicken coops, you'd see what I'm talking about. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I live right next door to it, and I have to look at it every day. And that's all, I'm against it. Kids can get, if a dog can get in a chicken coop, a kid can get through a fence or climb the fence and get out, who's gonna take care of those kids? And then besides that, going out and shooting a dog over a stupid chicken, even though he claims that's how he feeds his family, that's his business. If that's what he does, that's all right with me. I don't care about that. But you don't go out and shoot a dog in public with other kids around the other neighborhood. They've got kids on the left side of them. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. I think something needs to be looked at as far as the boundaries of having kids in the house. Does this mean kids in the house? Does it mean kids in the 4-car detached garage right next door to him that butts up against on his property? I mean, I just question it myself.
Thank you. Would you like to answer that, sir?
For one, I had 30-plus chickens out there. Yes, we had a litter of pups. I put everyone up to give them away. Gave a certain amount away. Getting ready to get rid of the rest of them. Yes, the puppies went in there and chewed up the chickens. They sat there and played with them. There was not a child around in the neighbor's yard or in my own yard. So you can't say there's kids around. It's a 4-foot fence all the way around that yard. The whole back area is fenced. So you got a dog that jumps a 4-foot fence. She was in a kennel, an 8-foot kennel. She'd get on top of the doghouse and she'd still jump, no matter what I do to keep her in. And no, I did not have dogs running all over. Puppies got through one area. I got it fenced off. You look at if you're looking straight at the house, it'll be the left side of the house. You'll see a 6-foot chain link fence over there where they got out. I dug it a foot to the ground. I got that area blocked off. The only way a dog gets out of that fence, it jumps right over it. There's nothing around that fence. Everything is secured. And if a kid got in that chicken coop, what are they gonna do? Get in there and get an egg, play with them? Because the chickens won't let them get close. It's blocked off from any child. My own kids wouldn't go in there. They do.
So if you, I understand when you have a daycare, there are all kinds of state rules you have to follow, and you have to have state inspections.
Yes, it'll be inspected because there's an inspector. After this step, the inspector comes out, looks at everything. They tell me what has to be done, what has to be changed. No different in foster care. They tell you what you have to do, step by step, what you have to do to go to the next step. If you don't do that next step, you don't go no farther. You're basically dead in the water, no place to go. And once they tell where the tree house is, that tree house is going to be blocked off, and there's going to be an area straight to the house. Nobody's going to have access to a chicken area or the back 3/4 that he's speaking about, or his property. My property, if you look at the property lines, I don't have exact numbers in front of me because I did not bring that piece of paper with me. I didn't think it would be relevant or anything else. From my garage to the other side, from the back of my garage to his property line is almost 9 feet. The fence runs close to the property line all the way down. The original builder put it there.
So how many people will you have working with you?
2 to 3. Myself, my wife, probably somebody else. Though, if any kids are out front, out in the backyard, they cannot get to the front. Because the back of my house, it is fenced off all the way across the driveway to the garage door. You cannot go exit that way. There's one fence there, a white one. Then behind it, there is a chain link fence between the house and the garage door, the main door you walk through to go into the big garage.
I think what I'm getting at is, isn't there like a statute or something that you have to have so many people compared to as many children as you have?
Anything over 12 kids, you have to have 3 more, because no matter what, there's still going to be 3 adults there at all times. For one, if they got to take one to the bathroom, there's always 1 or 2 in a big room with them, big area with them. If they're outside, there's 2 or 3 adults out there at all times.
What age of children are you going to have there? Do you want to have there?
Between 8 months and 5 years old. 8 at the max years, depending on, they've got different stages for class 1 homes. And 90% of the time, in the summertime, they'll be inside. They might go outside for a couple hours to play, to enjoy themselves and come back in, stay out of the heat.
So this is a year-round operation,
Yes.
not just
Another
during.
thing, DCS go to my house every month and check the children, they check the house every day, every month. They check everything. They make sure the dogs have vaccines, they know our chickens, they don't see it there, it's nothing wrong. It's every month. And also we have over here a therapist for one of our children, and they're going at our house every week.
We got therapists in the house every week. We got state workers in our house. Now getting ready to have 3 family case managers in our house every month to check our house, check the yard, check the animals,
Right, I assume if you have firearms, hopefully they're in a locked,
There,
Oh, yeah, that
everything's
is the
locked up.
very main thing.
right.
Yes, I was a family case manager, so I just left the job. But as a family case manager, we had to go each house of the
Right.
foster parents, and we had to check and make sure they have fire alarms. We had to check every
Right.
closet. We had to check every garage. If they have a basement or an attic, we had to go and check everything for the children in the high garage. Everything, if they have guns in the house, we make sure they have a safe
Right.
place and everything, the lock, and we take photos and everything. So they come our house every month, and they make sure the children are safe.
So make sure I understand, you have foster kids, you said?
Yes, we do.
Yes,
And
sir.
that's why you have regular visits from
Yes.
state inspectors of all
Yes.
kinds.
Correct.
Yes, all the time.
And I assume that if you had a daycare, you'd also have a huge liability insurance you'd have to
Yes,
carry.
we will.
And if a child gets injured, then you're subject to certainly lawsuits,
Just like
or
any.
you might be subject to prosecution. I don't know the laws well enough about daycare, I'll admit.
But we're not going to let our daycare, we have a big room on the back, attached to our house, they're going to be used that one. And we're going to do another space for the children, they're not going to use all the backyard because our backyard is very big. So we're going to fence it only for those children, and we're going to put a swing, a sandbox, only for them, for the daycare.
So you're saying if you get approval for a daycare, you will erect a fence to keep the
Yes.
children off the street and out of,
Oh, yeah, our house is fenced, both both sides. The front, the back, and everything is fenced.
They won't have access to the street because they won't go out the front door. They'll go out the back door that leads out of the room.
And that all has to be approved by
The
some
state-
licensing
Yes,
agent
they have
before.
to come people and everything, and check and everything, they're going to go everything, everything.
So what animals do you still have on the property?
One dog.
Oh, the one dog and
We have
chickens?
one dog. In the beginning, we had 2 cats. The cats went right and left. We have not seen cats.
Our
And-
neighbor,
and
his
our
wife
animals-
took our cats, so we let it go. And she took over our cats, and we didn't say nothing, and then she started having more cats, and then from there they took it, so nothing we can do. Our cat was a side cat.
so you're saying now you don't have chickens anymore?
We do,
I have chickens. One dog that belongs to my son,
that's it.
and that's it.
That's it.
No other animals.
So the dog that you have, is it the one that was getting out of the kennel and,
Just
It, the brown and white one, the black one, she'd jump over the 6-foot kennel. She'd get on top of the doghouse and jump
very
over it,
smart dog, very
then
smart.
jump over the 4-foot fence and just look at you like you're crazy.
I'm not sure you answered my question. The dog that you own now, is it the one that was causing the problem with your neighbor?
One of them, yes. But he's
Okay.
contained, he's been
It's
inside.
kind of how many times my wife has fed their animals. Unbelievable amount of time. They come and sit on our back deck and beg for.
Sir, if you want to talk, would you come up, sir?
But right now, you don't have the proper fence up.
We had a proper fence for everything, yes, we do.
But right now, you don't have the fence. You're gonna add more fencing, correct? That,
If I have to put a straight little fence from the house and enclose the treehouse area, that's what I'll do.
but right now, you don't. Everything's open right now.
They have not required it.
Okay, but right now, everything's open. Kids could get in the chicken coop.
No,
No.
the chicken coop is closed off.
Yes, oh, it's
Okay.
very good fence, nobody's
has-
going there.
8-foot chain link fence all the way around. Then on the back side of the fence, the 4-foot fence, I got 4 foot up, the boards all the way around it.
And
So
sometimes-
a German Shepherd would not jump the other side of the fence to kill more of my chickens. That's why I went 4 foot more in the air and boarded it all up.
And sometimes our chickens fly out because the wings grow again, so we had to cut it again. So sometimes that happens, but not often.
But those conditions an agency will evaluate before they license you. Is that correct?
because you will have to be licensed by the state. We've had other daycares that have had to conform to state regulations. So, let me make sure I understand. At the present, your yard is mostly open. You say that if you get approved, get a conditional use permit, you're gonna fence your entire yard in so that children cannot get out on the street or children can't get into where animals are. And you're gonna somehow or another make it so your dog does not, so if the dog can't get in with the children and possibly bite one or whatever dogs sometimes do. Is this what you're saying?
The property's already fully fenced with a 4-foot fence. If I need to add additional fencing around the other areas, yes, I will. And the dog, he's in the room 70% of the time, my son, he puts him out on a leash that goes from the deck 5 feet from the deck and back.
No interaction at all with the dog or the children. That could happen.
Correct.
That could happen.
No,
Good.
he'll be out. He'll be in the room, my son's room, during that time. And if my son takes him out, he'll take him out to the back part of the property.
Any other questions or comments, board members? So far, you're saying you propose to operate from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m.,
Yes, sir.
maximum of 12 children,
Correct.
yard to be completely fenced, and of course, all state regulations you have to adhere to.
Yes, sir, whatever they add to it whenever they come inspect a property in the house. If they tell me I gotta put a 8-foot wide fence from the corner of my deck to where the treehouse area is, they go out, they 20 feet on each side or whatever it is, and box it off. That's what I'll do if that's what they tell me to do.
Well,
But you're not gonna do that unless the state tells you
Oh, yes.
to add fencing. If they don't tell you, you're not gonna do it. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'll add it to a degree to keep it away from the pool area. Probably be straight out and over. But whatever they want me to do.
Well, it's not me wanting it, it's your licensing group that will say do that.
it's not what we want.
Right.
When it comes to state regulations, you have to do what they
Yes,
say.
we have to do what they want to tell. I can show you and follow our chicken coop and our fence.
Okay, sure, you can come up here and show the board.
Here's our chicken coop, and it's closed. And the
Okay.
chickens are there. And this our fence, this is our fence, all around our house. And our neighbor is the house up there. So we have fence on the house.
But there is no fence in the front.
And the front
Show
we
those
have.
board
Oh,
members
yes.
too.
Here's our chicken coop.
There won't be
and
no
the
children in the front yard.
Sometimes the fly on top.
I have a question for
And this is the
our
fence
staff
here.
member.
And I'll show you a photo of.
Does a daycare count as a home business, which only allows one employee besides family?
It falls under category
close, it's better to
860 or 681, which is secondary education. So no.
Okay. Well, you understand that a conditional use permit has conditions,
Yes, sir.
and if the conditions are violated, then that can be cause for being asked to come back here and instructed to correct whatever the problem is. And if there are flagrant violations, the conditional use permit can be withdrawn. So part of the conditional use permit criteria is affecting neighborhood values. So if this board grants you a conditional use permit, it would be for a term, whatever the board decides. And it's subject to being renewed each time the term is up. And the purpose is to protect you and make sure that you do what you say you're going to do and protect your neighbors. Because you can't have uses that harm the neighbors. Board members, any other questions, comments, clarifications?
You know, well, we talk about a lot of outdoor activities and all that when you have children, but in the last 2 weeks, our conditions have not been good for daycare centers primarily being outside. I mean, we had 8 inches of snow, we had ice. Where are the kids going to be inside the house? All in one room?
Oh, no, we have a big room, a big area.
Back third of the house, one room, we got a small room or medium-sized room for sleeping. Then the oversized family room is where the TV is, games, toys, and play area.
I can show you.
And then all your animals and things, dogs, cats, will they be inside?
We don't have cats.
We have no cats.
Okay, the
We
dog
haven't
will be
had cats
inside,
for 2+ years, sir.
but dogs will be inside?
He'll
Yeah.
be in my son's room where he stays 99% of the time. Because if my son's
I
not
worry
there,
about that 1%.
he's with my son.
I worry about that 1%. Yeah, I got 10 brothers and sisters. We could get into anything.
We don't
Speaking on past experience, I don't know.
His door's
I guess I'm
locked.
concerned. Thank you.
Well, the children, it's only one big room. I can show you the room for the children.
That's okay.
We'll see.
Any other questions, board members? Okay, you can have a seat. We'll go through our conditional use permit findings of fact. There are 9 criteria, and this is number 681. So, board members, number 1 is 681 the proper category? Mr. Acosta,
Yes.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I believe it is.
Mrs. Burkhart,
Yes.
Mr. Eaglin.
Secondary education, I guess so, yes.
Yes, I believe that's the proper one. I believe we've used it before in similar situations. Number 2, harmonious with the comprehensive plan, Mr. Acosta.
I think so. It's offering a service that's needed in the area.
Mr. Ferris,
Yeah, I agree as well. Daycare's in high demand right now.
Mrs. Burkhart,
Yeah, I agree. It's harmonious with the comprehensive plan.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes.
And I agree, that one's met, it's part of the plan. Number 3, harmonious, appropriate in appearance with the existing character of the general area and not change the essential character of the general area. Mr. Acosta.
I don't believe it changes the character. The applicant has explained that, inside there's a fenced area already, would add additional fence if necessary, and obviously would be inspected and regulated by the either state or federal authorities, whoever invokes those things.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, even with additional fencing, it's still gonna look like a house in a residential area.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I don't think it'll change the essential character as long as all rules are met.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, like I said, if all the rules are met, should be okay.
And I agree with that. Obeying the state and local regulations should make that one met. Hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses, Mr. Acosta.
Appreciating the neighbors' comments. I think whatever those situations were, I don't see those affiliated with an operation of this type. I think those are other types of issues that neighbors have. But I don't see,
That has to do with character. Nobody good takes a gun out and shoots an animal for no reason at all. That's character. Either have good character or bad character. That's what I'm saying.
We're not here to determine that, sir.
Yeah, but if you get does the state give you any information what they require for him to do?
No. Our
no,
staff,
that's not our issue here.
No, but, so the state does a recommendation. Are you informed of what the recommendations are?
We do not receive that information.
So you don't know what they're doing, if they're complying with state regulations or not?
No, but the state does. The state will regulate that with them.
Do they notify you in event that they?
It is not this board's authority to do any of that.
with the conditional use, sir, we can put conditions on it. And I'm proposing, should the board get past this findings of fact, and we decide to make a motion, we can put various conditions on it that they have to follow. And there is a remedy if they violate. There are always legal remedies. If in your view they violate things, you can call the police, you can call the city government, you can request a meeting to discuss any violations. There, you have legal remedies, as that's what they call them. And these things are renewed regularly. We do once in a while have people that are bad actors.
Yep.
And they end up in court. So that's the best I can say for you.
All right.
I believe we were on number 4. Hazardous or disturbing to existing or future neighboring uses. Mr. Acosta.
Yeah, that was saying, I think whatever disagreements and issues they've previously had are not anything affiliated with this type of opportunity for them to have in their home. And there's nothing about the operation that you want to put in that I see causing disruption or issues with your neighbors.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree. I think the gentleman that spoke in opposition to this was addressing issues not related to factors that we have to consider in our approval of this application. And I think also that with the right conditions outlined in a proposal, that we can reasonably address any of these things that the neighbors might see as problematic.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree, as long as there's conditions that are set and they abide by those, I don't see a problem with hazardous or disturbing to the neighborhood.
Mr. Edelman.
Well, I think it could be hazardous and has been disturbing to the neighborhood, if not controlled. I mean, I think he had some complaints that should have been addressed. I mean, I don't know how many years y'all been neighbors. It sure sounds like there's been a lot going on. So yes, I think it could be hazardous if not controlled. I think going over and talking to your neighbor might be a good word to start.
Hazardous or disturbing. This use as a daycare center with sufficient conditions applied, and with the fact that any injury or harm to a child is going to have repercussions. I think those are constraints, so I think that one could be met. Number 5, this is adequate police, fire, drainage, highways, water, sewer, et cetera. Mr. Acosta.
Yeah, those, I mean, obviously, existing services already don't require additional ones.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I mean, all the modern conveniences and public services are already in existence out in that area.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree. I see no problem with any of those.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yeah, should be okay on that.
And I agree that particular one is met. Number 6, detrimental to the economic welfare of the community, require public expense for whatever. Mr. Acosta.
No, it doesn't require any public expense and offers a service that's needed.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Costa.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree with those comments.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, I agree.
Detrimental economic welfare, we've heard no testimony about property values or whatever, so I see no, I think that one's met. Number 7, problems from excessive production of traffic noise, smoke fumes, glare, odors. Mr. Acosta.
No, they look like quite adequate driveway space, everything. It doesn't seem like it would cause any issue with infrastructure.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, that road services the airport, and a daycare is not gonna add any additional interference with traffic.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I agree. I see no problem with any of those either.
Mr. Eaglin.
Yes, traffic should not be a problem.
And I agree, I see no problem with traffic. And number 9, that's about the loss or damage of scenic or historic features. Mr. Acosta.
Yeah, not relevant on this.
Mr. Ferris.
Yeah, I don't see any issues with any of those.
Mrs. Burkhart.
I see no issues.
Mr. Eaglin.
No, it doesn't apply.
I don't even think that one applies. I move we approve conditional use permit for BZCU-25-3 for a period of 1 year. Conditional use permit for a daycare center with the following conditions. Operation hours 5 a.m. to 6 p.m., maximum of 12 children. The yard is to be enclosed in such a way that neither children nor animals can escape. And any complaints to police or state authorities will require a hearing before the Board of Zoning Appeals, and that all state daycare regulations be adhered to. And that's my motion.
Second.
And is our attorney still with us?
Yes, he's on the phone.
Then I have a question for our attorney. You've heard my motion with conditions. Are there any legal problems you see with this? Apparently our attorney is not here. Well, then I will make that, my motion stands that way.
It has been seconded.
And it has been seconded.
Are you seconded?
Pardon?
Yes.
Roll call.
Rick Barris,
Yes.
Nancy Burkhart,
Yes.
Mark Acosta,
Yes.
Scott Baldwin,
Yes.
Carl Eaglin.
No.
And the motion passes 4-1. Well, I hope, folks, I hope you understood all the conditions that we put on this. as I specified, your hours is what you said, 5 AM to 6 PM. And you said maximum of 12 children. Adhere to all the state and local regulations for a daycare. This is stuff you would have to do. And I also threw in one that if there are valid complaints, you may be subject to a hearing again before the Board of Zoning Appeals. So we wish you well, and we hope you get along with your neighbor. And the period of this conditional use is 1 year from today. So which means, if you're not familiar with how this works, 1 year from today, if you have no complaints, then you pay a renewal fee and it'll be renewed automatically.
He had a question.
Yes, do you have a question?
If I do have a complaint, I know I'm out to the right-hand side, no matter what I do, what am I supposed to do?
Well, try to work it out with him. That almost always works best.
And I'd say document everything that, is said or that you've done. Documentation is going to be your best friend, is what it's going to be.
That's exactly right. You keep a record of
You could say
everything
anything you
do.
want, but you got to have documentation. If you've had people come from the state to look at everything, make sure you keep, I'm sure you do, keep everything well organized and documentation. That's all you can do, really.
And that's the best advice you'll ever hear. You
Yeah,
document everything
absolutely.
you do.
Right. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. So you've got to write everything down.
From this board's perspective, what we will, as far as entertaining complaints or something like that, are going to they'll deal with those 9 questions we just asked, as well as pertaining to the conditions that were in the thing. The sitting board that's going to solve a civil matter between 2 parties.
Right.
That's not, if your neighbor complains because he didn't like you or something like that, that's not the purpose of this. A complaint to this board would have to be something that violates this conditional use permit.
Or violates a state or whatever ordinance. But if you follow everything the way the state says, and you have your inspections and you document everything, you won't have any trouble.
Right.
It's just that simple. Well, is there anything else I've omitted? Staff?
The only thing I would note, at your last meeting, you instructed the city attorney to send a letter to Mike Anderson. There was a miscommunication on that, so that has not been done. So I would ask for that to be continued to the next meeting, just so that he has time to pay that before he has to reapply.
And I move we continue this till our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
And welcome back, Nicole.
Thank you.
Good to see you. I'm
And
sure you're glad to be here.
our secretary has moved on to other things, so I move we designate Nicole Shell as BZA secretary.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And I think that's everything, so motion to adjourn.
So
I move
moved.
we adjourn.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.
Sheriff Dave Thomas passed away. Remember Dave? Sheriff.
Oh, huh.
He had a stroke.
Oh, did he?
He's not, he wasn't